Hey, now that we're in the vaguely wintry holiday season, the most appropriate thing to do on the channel is embrace Jack Frost nipping at our noses. And thankfully, Scooby-Doo has a lot of wintry adventures to look at, so we'll be looking at several of those this month. We've already soft-launched it by looking at the 10,000 volt ghost, but instead of going for the obvious next, I thought we might go a little more obscure and off the typical radar for a season of Scooby I personally think is really great, but also really underrated. Like the Lady Vampire of the Bay, we're headed into the original first season of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. This series is still pretty great, not to be written off, as it's the last season before the total revamp, and for me, really just another solid and well-made season of the original show extended. Scrappy just happens to be here. Today we're looking at Season 1, Episode 13, Rocky Mountain Yiiiii! Originally aired December 15th, 1979. Yes, the title is a reference to the John Denver song Rocky Mountain High. Co-written by Douglas Booth, you might also recognize the other writer on the episode he was a frequent collaborator with, Glenn Leopold, who has had a large amount of wonderful work on the franchise, but perhaps most notably 1998's Zombie Island, made 19 years later, a movie I have a video about over on Patreon. This also interestingly seems like it was meant to be the season finale, but another 3 episodes ultimately were ordered. Also, we do unfortunately have to deal with Marla Frumpkin as Velma in this episode. If you've seen videos covering other parts of the era, like recently my video on the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, you already know her performance is usually not very good, so we'll see about that. Not only is this episode available in the full season set, you can also find it of course on the 2012 DVD set 13 Spooky Tales, Holiday Chills and Thrills, as seen here. We'll probably mention that every one of these videos this month. Surprisingly, you can also find it on the 2014 DVD set 13 Spooky Tales, Field of Screams. Let's take a look at what makes this episode and season still so great. The episode opens up at Pratt's Peak Lodge, several people skiing, as is often the case in these wintry episodes. And these two guys are about to go when they hear a growl. Snow starts to shift as a hand pops out, to their horror, and this guy is revealed. The men immediately identify him as the ghost of Jeremiah Pratt, our villain today, as he says this is his mountain, maniacally laughing as they take off. Later, the gang have arrived in their typical winter attire, and
for the height of the season, Pratt's Peak Lodge looks awfully deserted.
I'm so sorry to Marla Frumpkin, but her performance just gets me every time. Turns out she's also doing double duty this episode as this woman, Mrs. Winters the housekeeper, opens the door.
You must leave at once.
This is really not any better. I take it this is supposed to be intimidating, but it's like someone being given a line 5 seconds earlier and just saying it out loud without direction. So it's not just that Frumpkin wasn't a good Velma, she's just not giving good performances in the show in general. Her voice certainly isn't suited for an older woman especially.
Grave danger lurks here. There's something strange.
Like, I hate harping on someone, but surely someone in 1979 had to recognize that this was not good, right? Thankfully, Noah Reed, owner of the lodge, stops her from saying much more and invites them in. Curiously, his voice actor is not known officially. Selma asks why the place is deserted, and Mr. Reed says it's because of him, referencing the painting which Mrs. Winters identifies as the ghost of Jeremiah Pratt. Mr. Reed says she's just superstitious though, and that Pratt died in 1865 after leaving his cabin at the summit. Mrs. Winters adds that he had been killed in an avalanche and was never found or seen again, and confirms that's what spooked everyone off. Another young man, ski instructor Will Henry, walks over to say there's no such thing as ghosts, and heads out to do his job. The gang check into their rooms, and as Shaggy checks out the view, he comes face to face with the ghost himself. As one would expect, he yells to leave his mountain, so the boys rush to tell the others. They don't find anything when they check initially, until they hear a booming voice from the roof and see him above, with another warning. He kicks off the snow to bury them in it, not unlike his own fate. So Velma decides it's time to check out Pratt's old cabin for clues. Following Mr. Reed's story of the cabin being at the summit, they arrive at the ski lift, but Shaggy is not interested in partaking.
While you check out the cabin, we'll check out down here.
Check out what, Shaggy?
Like, check out of the hotel.
I don't get it.
I love all the little times he started saying that before it became his thing in a pup nearly a decade later. The boys think they'll be a lot safer skiing down the bunny slope, but Scrappy reveals that's actually the other way. This way is danger. And it's too late, off they go. They have a lot of filler antics, including with a bear, until they finally crash into the ghost. The boys jump up and fall backward, turning into a giant snowball that then falls on the ghost as well, then Scrappy, and just keeps going. Meanwhile, the other 3 make it to the cabin. It looks pretty good for its age, though. Immediately as they walk in, Daphne steps on a loose floorboard that reveals what Velma finds to be the diary of Jeremiah Pratt. Kind of seems obviously planted if nobody stepped on that exact board right as you're coming in all this time. Looking through it, they find that the last entry has been ripped out for some reason, though the pen indented what was written on the next page. Not explained in the episode is the date of this part of the diary being December of 1869. How was he writing the diary in 1869, if we know from earlier that he died in 1865? Very curious. Anyway, with the indent left, Velma has an idea of how to still read what was torn out. Back to the giant snowball. They splat, everything around them cracks, and they're suddenly on a giant chunk of ice floating on water. Not only does this come off as kind of confusing, they also had the ghost with them in the snowball, if you remember just moments ago. Why is he not with them now? Scrappy at least knows where he is, right behind them, wet and pissed off.
Your meddling days are over.
The old guy makes it onto the ice with them, and it seems like it may be over for them finally. Out on the ice, Scrappy does his best to defend the boys against the much larger ghost, but Scoob grabs him so they can race out of there. Funny how they were just trapped and now there's an easy way to safely jump across the ice. Headed for the cave, the ghost following. He continues on down looking for them, but the boys manage to hide. No thanks to Scrappy, who does on average serve to be a menace in this first season. Shaggy finds a frozen ladder to at least get out of here with. The others meanwhile start work on the diary, Velma using charcoal to reveal what the indents show. Yet another entry from 1869, 4 years after the guy died. Again, never explained. Did they just have the date wrong earlier somehow? Much to think about. The entry says he was hired to guide a government shipment of eagles over the pass, which Daphne finds to be an odd shipment, but Fred remarks that this must be where he was struck by the avalanche. They then hear a sudden noise, a trapdoor opened up by the boys, confirming the cave leads to Pratt's old cabin. They tell them they trapped the ghost down there, so everyone rushes really enthusiastically.
Jinkies, let's find him.
You know what? I really don't have anything to say about her. It speaks for itself. You heard it. The boys had their fill of that and stay behind, but when Scrappy goes to get more logs for the fire, Shaggy talks himself into being worried for the little guy, sending Scoob to keep an eye out, while he makes sure it's all clear at the door. The window is another story with Jeremiah haunting over there. They trade places, Scoob looking out the clear window as Jeremiah bursts the door open instead. Shaggy tells Scoob to close the door, and he just pushes the ghost out without even thinking. Very chill of him. When Shaggy checks out who's knocking at the door after, it's just little Scrappy back with the wood, all clear, until Jeremiah opens the door again, so it's time to get out for real, while he gives them another angry shout. The others meanwhile look through the icy cave for clues, and Daphne finds a bunch of giant ice cubes that Fred somehow immediately knows are hiding a secret room. Inside, they find boxes of explosives and digging tools, so while they don't know what it's for, clearly there's some operation going on down here. The boys can be heard outside screaming, so they rush out. The boys now way up on the ski lift. Really not the best idea, as Jeremiah starts shaking the cable and swinging them all over, which is in fact one of my worst nightmares, causing them to fall into, thankfully, some snow. The others make it over and find 3 living ice cubes, while Mrs. Winters robotically tells them they can thaw in the sauna. The cubes sit and enjoy themselves when a 4th blur walks in to join them, but it just takes his scream for them to recognize who he is, and the fright is even enough to break the ice, and apparently close. Shaggy lost his green jacket between there and making it out of the room without explanation, as they crash and hide in some skis. The others also for some reason decided to change into their normal clothes, which mind you they have not worn once in the episode until now.
The rose, the rose.
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him that. They'll only want to chase it.
Oh, right. Never mind.
Scrappy runs in to get the ghost, but comes out with Mr. Reed instead, who says he was fixing a leak in the sauna. He's not happy about the encounter either, storming off as Daphne looks at the mess of skis they need to clean up now. Velma worries they might have messed up Will Henry's especially, looking closer and finding they say WHP on them, which appears to click everything into place for her. And as she has a plan, in that split second, she's miraculously changed back into her winter outfit. Very neat of her. Later in the lodge, Will Henry remarks that this is the kind of night even he could believe in ghosts, when there's a sudden crash sound that Mr. Reed compares to an avalanche. Velma, who's changed back to her regular clothes again, says she sees something out the window, pointing to a covered wagon, and as the other 3 come to join her, Mr. Reed wondering if it's the lost wagon of Jeremiah Pratt, Velma has yet again switched back to her winter clothes. She's really good at these quick changes. She runs to check it out, while we see it's actually the boys holding up a facade as part of the plan, with Fred and Daphne holding a net over it as they wait for the ghost. And Velma reports that the explosion did in fact fact draw him out as he laughs and celebrates finally finding the wagon. But as he pulls the top off, their ruse is out in the open. And just as they toss the net down, Scrappy manages to screw everyone over by tackling the ghost out of the way. Great job. Now you're caught and he's free. A real avalanche suddenly starts, however, which also seems to have uncovered the real covered wagon after all these decades, rushing down at them. Everyone, ghost included, jumps in to survive the avalanche together, and as they crash and look over the damage, they find the ghost miraculously has been stuck, trapped in the snow. Velma explains that he was after the lost wagon of Jeremiah Pratt, while Fred adds that the rumblings they heard were him searching for it with those explosives in the cave. As for what he was after, it was what they read about in the journal, the wagon of eagles. It turns out Jeremiah wasn't transporting eagles as in birds, but eagles as in the base unit of gold coins in the Coinage Act of 1792. These were minted from 1797 to 1933, and were worth $10 as Velma tells us. And as for their reveal, Fred expects the WHP on Will Henry's keys to mean Will Henry Pratt. It's assumed the episode takes this name from the British actor William Henry Pratt, who you might know better by his stage name, Boris Karloff. His iconic roles in Frankenstein and The Mummy inspired many a moment in Scooby. Our fake spook Will here became the ghost of his ancestor to scare away tourists and find the wagon. He says the gold rightfully belongs to him, but
That was a government shipment and rightfully belongs to Uncle Sam.
I mean, she's not wrong. He has no reason to think it belongs to him. It never belonged to Jeremiah, but the way she says it, fuck Uncle Sam. Later, the humans look up at the dogs as Scooby prepares to attempt this intense ski jump, uncle and nephew speeding down and through the air. It all goes fairly smooth, even the parachute working, and they safely land underneath.
Scooby-Doo!
And Scrappy-Dappy-Doo too!
And that's Rocky Mountain, yay! Firstly, this admittedly isn't one of the absolute best episodes of this season or iteration. There are some that are genuinely outstanding. I wouldn't say this is truly among them. Obviously, some of the performances do hurt the episode. Frumpkin Velma stands out like a sore thumb, and her big info dump reveal at the end loses some of its zest because her line reads are so robotic. Likewise, Mrs. Winters isn't any better, sounding like a robot herself the entire time, and any of her moments that were supposed to be eerie come off as just silly instead. I do hate to harp on her, but the chunk of episodes at the end of this where she takes over Velma while the character is still a major part of the show really stand out. The episode has a lot of silly, goofy little continuity errors that stand out also, mainly coming from giving the characters different outfits. Animation typically has characters wear the same thing to make everything a lot easier to animate, and especially reuse animation without worrying about continuity, mainly a Hanna-Barbera thing like this show. Here you have Velma constantly switching between her regular and winter outfit, along with the other two. You have Shaggy losing his jacket inexplicably. Things like that end up being pretty distracting. Speaking of, I love getting to see him without the jacket on so that we can see this really crazy turtleneck sweater he has on underneath. It blends in with his pants and looks really weird on him. Scrappy also ends up being especially a nuisance here. In the best episodes of the season, you can just ignore him, but gosh, if he's not really on those last nerves here, even ruining the trap at the end. There's also just enough filler at points to feel like it starts to drag. And speaking of continuity, it's not the biggest issue, but it's surprising the date of Jeremiah's death and the dates in his diary missed the mark by 4 years and nobody caught that. It's not intentional since it's not acknowledged in the episode. I doubt younger audiences are going to be paying attention to that though. A lot of these hold this one back from being one of the higher tier episodes of the era, but it's not all bad. We at least have 3 potential suspects here: Mrs. Winters, Mr. Reed, and Will Henry. There's not necessarily reason to suspect the other two outside of just being here, and Mrs. Winters having so much say in pushing the ghost narrative, but there isn't necessarily reason to suspect a lot of the classic villains outside of just meeting them earlier. Jeremiah Pratt isn't one of the most iconic or memorable designs, but I think he's still perfectly fitting the bill. He serves his purpose pretty well as far as humanoid ghosts go. There's just enough to his design to make it intimidating. You could slip this episode in with some of the classics and it would be just fine. It would just really stand out, if nothing else for Velma. I like this episode, just like I enjoyed this season, so I think this is still a perfect one to throw on during this winter holiday season, whatever you call it. I think that's all we really have to say about this one, however. We still have a few more episodes appropriate for this time to go though, so hopefully you'll return to check out those as well as we make our way through them. If you want to support the channel, the Patreon is now live. There's an exclusive Zombie Island video for supporters, all that stuff. Patreon is mainly just if you want to support the channel, but you at least get a special bonus right now, and new videos earlier. I'll see you soon, probably. Bye!